Okay, so some common mistakes to avoid. Well, having made a big play on the importance of the uh, the mock exam or the sample papers, whatever term you want to use, don't skip those. The more questions, yeah, that are in an ITIL style with the ITIL nuances that are written by ITIL examiners that you can undertake and hopefully get right, yeah, is going to be of great value when you do the exam for real. Okay. And again, a little bit of a reference to using accredited ITIL materials. There may well be lots of questions out there in the internet world, but if they're not written by ITIL examiners, then they're not ITIL questions. Okay, so really do make use of the opportunity to do those mock exams. Yeah, build up that confidence. Work out what you're getting wrong. Did you get it wrong because you didn't read the question right, or did you get it wrong because actually you've still got a bit of a mental block on the 4 dimensions? So you've got a bit of a mental block. Maybe not on the guiding principles, but maybe one of the guiding principles. Yeah. So use it to home in and then maybe focus that revision time. Yeah. Yeah. Do the exam. Yeah. Yeah. Go through the mock answers, as we said before, real value from knowing why right is right and why wrong is wrong. We talked about, relying only on memory. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah. There's 3 days. If you were doing this as a course in a classroom, 3 days, a couple of hundred, well, maybe 300 or so slides. You're not going to remember all of that. Get the understanding clear. Use the syllabus. Yeah. Understand the things that are really important to remember. Get that good understanding. And as I said before, for things that you need to recall that might be visually, nicely presented, yeah, like the service value chain or the service value system, sketch them out, write in the different labels. You're more likely to remember them than if you try and recall a particular diagram where, to be honest, some of them look very similar. Yeah. Spend time on the practices. Yeah. Get those purpose statements really clear in your mind. Again, write them down if need be. You remember those. Yeah. There may be some practices that, as part of the day job, you're quite close to. But there may be some practices that maybe you're not close to at all. So give them equal weighting, to get that purpose understood. Okay. Overthinking the simple questions. Yeah, I mean, sometimes people do say, oh, there are lots of trick questions. Well, there aren't. Yeah. So no one's trying to trip you up. Okay. So if you think something's obvious and dead easy and you think, well, that can't be right. Well, maybe it's just a question that's just hit you at the right time. It's something you're really confident on. You're on top of your game. You understand it. It's easy. Yeah. If it seems too easy, well, it's not easy because of a trick or whatever. Well, there's not words that are trying to trip you up. So sometimes people spend a lot of time thinking, well, the way I read it was, and then I read it again. I thought he might be doing this. Yeah. So again, be conscious of your time. You've plenty of time, but you don't need to overthink. If you're overthinking it, then that suggests, yeah, you've not really sort of understood the question properly. And the last one, which I think is really important, is answer questions based on what ITIL says. Yeah. The amount of time people have said to me, that's the way we do it. Yeah. And no one's going to say what you or your organization does, when you get back to the day job, the way you do things, the way your organization does things. No one's going to say that's right or wrong. Yeah. But yeah, the questions are about what ITIL says. Yeah, the questions about the approach that ITIL endorses. So if it seems an easy answer because that's the way we do it back at the workplace, just double check. Yeah. Does this actually align with what I understand of ITIL 4? Okay. So yeah. So in some organizations, I'm sure you're probably following ITIL ways of working. In some cases, you may be following them literally, as ITIL ways of working, or things that embrace some of the principles of ITIL. Remember, when it comes to an ITIL 4 question, it has to be answered based on what does ITIL 4 say. Okay, so just something to remember. And again, these are things that people tell me afterwards. I got it wrong because I didn't read it properly, or I got it wrong because that's the way we do it. not the way ITIL 4 suggests you should do it. So some other important points. Allocate sufficient study time. It says 8 to 12 hours. Well, your background, your experience, the day job, may temper that one way or the other. Probably a key thing to really state here is allocate that study time. Yeah, once you've actually booked your exam. Don't do your study and then think, oh, right, I'll see when I can book the exam. Book your exam. Yeah, redeem your voucher code, get a date in the schedule. People, sir, who administer the exams, you can pick a time and date pretty much that fits you. If you want to do it in the morning, you want to do it in the evening, you want to do it on a weekend, there will be a time slot, I'm certain, for you. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. People, sir, are a global organization. So it doesn't matter what time zone you're in, there'll be a slot that works for you. But get that peg in the ground. Get that date in the diary and then work back from that and plan your study and your revision to get to a good point when you're ready. So look at your study time, absolutely, but get a date in the diary and work back from that. What do I need to do to be ready to take that exam? Particularly when you finish the formal study. Sometimes people will pick a date several weeks in advance. So I've finished my training. I'm going to do some revision. I'm going to book my exam, and it's 6 weeks away. And then what happens is life gets in the way. All of a sudden, what seemed a lot of time to fit this in, it's disappeared. And then people start rescheduling. And once people start rescheduling, it's usually a signal they're probably going to struggle to pass. Okay. When's a good time to book the exam? I would say probably 7 to 10 days after you've finished your sort of official sort of study time. Okay. So don't leave it too long, I guess, is the key message. Traditionally, I see people who take the exam sooner, are more successful than those who push it 2 months, 3 months. Trust me, I've had some students who took the exam 12 months after the course was completed, and no surprise, many of those are unsuccessful. Okay. Talked about the power of visual, so where there are videos, and look at the ITIL official sites, lots of useful resources there. Again, depending on the way you revise, maybe create sort of what I call quick reference, some sort of at a glance hints and tips. So for incident management, put incident management and what's the purpose statement. Problem management, what's the purpose statement? What's the definition of a service? Write it down. So things you can literally go through, maybe the day before the exam, maybe even an hour or two before the exam. You're not working your way through lots of documents and trying to find things, online. Write them down. You've got them at your fingertips. The sort of things you typically know you're going to get questions on. Master the terminology. ITIL is a lexicon. Universally applied now. What's an incident? What's a problem? But get that clear in your mind. Okay, particularly where there may be some differences in the way you refer to things back in the day job. A great example of that is in ITIL 4 Foundation. There are only 3 roles that are described. There are many implied, like an incident manager or a service level manager or a problem manager, but the only 3 that are described are actually in what we call the consumer organization: customer, user, and sponsor. Typical trapdoor: if you work in a service desk and back at work you refer to people who ring you in the desk as customers, you're probably going to struggle, because in ITIL 4, the only people who ever call the desk are users. Okay, if you call them customers because it's a good thing to do, customer satisfaction, if you call people who call the desk customers, you're probably going to get one of those answers wrong, because in ITIL 4, the only people who call the desk are users. Users talk to the desk talk to users. So it's those sort of things you have to be clear. And again, this avoidance of what we call things back at the day job, make sure you understand the ITIL 4 specifics. Okay. And finally, so we talked a lot about sort of, getting ready to take the exam, some of those hints and tips around preparing for the exam. But of course, you also need to consider preparing for the actual event itself. Okay, so if you've never done an online proctored exam before, this is going to be something new. So People Cert provide, a small set of guidelines and instructions. So again, be familiar with them before you take the exam. But the things that are really important just to get right, yeah, because if you get these wrong, it can create what I call a bit of a wobble, because if the invigilator is not happy, then they'll start asking you to do things, and all of a sudden you were calm, you were ready, you were prepared, and the next minute you're running around trying to sort things out. So some of the things you need to be aware of. So make sure you've got a location. If it's in the workplace, book a room. Yeah. If it's in the house or your flat or apartment, make sure you've got a room that's going to be used for the exam. If there are any other people around, yeah, make sure they're aware, yeah, you're taking an exam, because the invigilators don't like people walking in. If you're taking it at home and you've got young children, yeah, try and, as best you can, make sure that your partner or whoever's looking after the children doesn't allow them just to walk in, yeah, because as soon as invigilators see doors opening and closing, they get very worried. Okay, so select a room, yeah, either in the office, yeah, or at home. Make sure it's only got one door, and make sure when you're taking the exam, any windows, if there are windows, are behind you. Yeah, invigilators don't want to think that when you're sat looking at the screen, there's a door that could open, or there's a window where someone could, as if they would, but be holding up, flip charts or hints and tips. Okay, all right, might seem a bit like paranoia, but that's what invigilators are there to do. So as long as they can see the door, as long as they can see the window, yeah, then they're quite comfortable. So if you pick a room with lots of windows, if you pick a room with more than one door, they get quite nervous and twitchy. Okay. In some cases, they may ask you to move to an alternative room. So you don't want that. Okay. Again, if you're in a room, particularly in the workplace, if there are things written on whiteboards, there are things pinned on wall boards, posters, again, they get a little bit twitchy. So try and be in a room where there's no sort of reference points that you could look to, yeah, where there may be some things written down. So either take any sort of things down, clear the whiteboard, whatever. So again, the invigilator's quite happy. And of course, as best you can, plan to avoid those distractions. So, if you've got a yappy dog that I've got, for example, try and make sure someone's took the dog for a walk. Things like doorbells and alarms. Yeah, maybe switch them off whilst you take the exam if you're doing it at home. If you're doing it in the office, Wednesday, usually weekly sort of fire bell test or building alarm. Yeah, you don't want to be in the middle of your exam and suddenly the fire bell goes. Yeah, so again, as best as you can, understand those and work around them. And importantly, inform others you're taking an exam. So put something on the door outside. Put a note on. Quiet, please. Exam in progress. Because sometimes in the office, people may walk in. Oh, I got the wrong office. I got the wrong room. Try and avoid that. Yeah, put something on the door. And if you've got people who are at home, yeah, just as a gentle reminder, don't walk in. I'm taking an exam. They sound, sort of small things, but they're important. I had an exam some years ago where they weren't happy with the room I was using at home. They didn't like my office because we've got lots of posters and whiteboards. They didn't like my conservatory because I've got three sides of windows. They didn't like my kitchen because actually got quite a long kitchen with three doors. Didn't like that. Eventually, I took it in the bedroom. Yeah, on my knees. Yeah, with the laptop on the bed so they could actually see the door. Okay, not a great preparation for an exam. So get these things clear and plan for them. And then on the day, yeah, make sure you've got no papers, you've got no mobile phones, anything that can be construed as an aid or an aid memoir. Yeah, you will be asked to silence your phone and push your phone away. if you've got a smart watch, they'll ask you to remove the smartwatch. You know, anything that could potentially give you an answer. Okay. They'll guide you through closing down any sort of unnecessary applications on your computer. You say, use that quiet please examining process and try to make sure that room remains private and uninterrupted. If you're in a busy office environment, yeah, only takes an hour for the exam. Yeah, book the room maybe half an hour before and half an hour after you anticipate finishing. Yeah, make sure people don't just walk in because they've got a meeting just about to start. Okay, so that's all covered in the guidelines that PeopleCert will provide you when you register for the exam, but just to give you that sort of advance sort of heads up of the sort of things to consider, particularly if you're thinking of taking an exam, in the sort of near future. Okay, all right, well, I hope you found that reasonably useful, some of the hints and tips